Okay, welcome to the final part of this series where we actually do the cropping of the image. Alright, so let's begin immediately. So we go to the crop page, which we haven't put anything yet. This is where we put our PHP. Okay, that will actually do the cropping. So let's add our PHP tags in there. PHP. Alright. So in here, there's a function in PHP called image copy resampled. So this is the function that actually we are going to use to crop our image. So let me make a copy of this. Let me duplicate so that we have reference. Let me comment this one out as we change the parameters. So let's look at this function. It takes in a few parameters. The first of all is the destination image, where we are taking this image, what we're going to save it as. So in this case, this is it's not really the file name, but the image resource. And then there's a source image, where the source of the image, which is also an image resource, not a file name. And then we have destination X and destination Y, where we're going to start pasting, because this function, what it's actually doing is copying from one image and pasting from the source and pasting on the destination. So we have to know where to paste on the X and the Y. So this is probably going to be 0, 0. So we can as well write 0, 0, because we want to paste at the beginning of the image. And then source X and source Y, we don't know. This is going to come from the information on where the user wants to crop. Then there's the destination width and destination height. This is going to be the dimensions of the cropped image. So in order to and then here the source width and source height will also come from the source image as the user selects. So let me put a semicolon at the end, and then let's define the width. We want the width of the image. Actually, I don't need to write pixels. We want the width and height to be 400. So we are cropping. Whenever we crop, regardless of the initial size of the image, we want it to end up as a 400 by 400 pixel image that is cropped. So we can use this width and height here at the destination width, for example, and then also on the destination height, which would be 400, 400. So we could have put this 400, 400 directly there. Matter of fact, I think we should do that for simplicity. 400 and 400, like that. Okay, so let's create our destination and source. So first of all, we're going to send some information from the interface using the get variable here. So the source in here is going to be from the get. So we're going to use a get, and then we're going to, actually we don't need the get because we know where the image is already. It's called image.jpg. So we can just put it there directly. But this should be an image resource and not a file name. So what we're going to say is image create from JPEG. Okay, that's the source. So we are creating an image from JPEG. If your image is a PNG, you're going to use the image create from PNG function. So let's put that file name in there like that. So we are creating an image resource from this one. And then the destination now, let's just write dest for shortcut. We're going to say image create, let's see, I've missed something here. Image create true color. Okay, so we're going to create a true color image. The width and the height, as we know, are 400 pixels by 400 pixels. Okay, so this is the source, this is the destination. And what we need now, so we can put these here. Let me put dest here, dest, and let's put source there. So the only parameters missing now are source X, source Y, and then source width and source height, which we can't know from here. They have to come from the user. So at the end of the day, once this thing is done, we are supposed to create a JPEG from this image. Remember, this is an image resource in the destination. It's not a file name. So we have to save it to file, and we're going to use image JPEG to do that. If you are using a PNG, to be image PNG. So image JPEG, we are getting the dest, that's the final product, and then our file name will be cropped, okay, and then cropped.jpg, sorry, .jpg, and then we're going to define the quality of the image, which could be 90 or something. I don't like 100%. Let me put it at 98, something like that. But you could leave it out. It's an optional thing. If you leave it out, it will save at 100%. All right, so once we do that, we have an image called cropped.jpg. Then we can return this by echoing it out. We echo cropped.jpg. Okay, now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a question mark and say something like, and just add a random number at the end of, say, rand 0,100, something like that, so that it gives me a random number thing. The reason I did this is to force the browser to refresh. Let's say we crop this many times and we fail. I want to force the browser to actually refresh the image every time and not cache it, so that we see the new result immediately. All right, so far so good. Now here we can replace these already because we know they're going to come from the get variable. So I'm going to say get in here. We're going to send the x value in get x, like that. And then we will do the same thing for y. We're going to say get y. And then here source is going to be get width, source width. And then here get height. Oh, sorry, what have I done? No. Height minus the x. All right, so our function is complete. So this is all we need for this page, and our cropping is done. So this same function is used for cropping and resizing. I have tutorials in depth explaining how these work. You can check those out. All right, so let me go back to our interface and let's create a new function here to send this image. Let's name this function crop. Right at the bottom, function crop, like that. We don't need to pass in any parameters, so let's go down and kick it. So as you can see, we have the value code ratio up here, which is already set. Once we reset this ratio is set in this function to the actual ratio of whatever image it is we have. All right, and actually what I forgot here on reset image, sorry about that, I forgot an else here for in case the image is actually if this is the opposite, if the height of the image is larger than the width. So down here, let me copy this and paste it here and simply do the opposite. I totally forgot about this part, but here we are. So we're going to swap this for height and swap this for width. Oh, sorry. Swap for width. Okay. And in here we're going to say the height. No, we say width is going to be container width. Okay, that remains. And then height will be container client height. Okay, client height. This remains the same. Then here the left is the one that's going to be margin, and then the top will be extra, and in this extra we're going to be using heights and container height divided by 2. All right, so this is going to center the image if the height is bigger, unlike the image we have right now. All right, so we are cropping. Let's go back to our crop function down here. So what we actually need to get is the x here. How far from the edge to here is the image, and how far from the top to the image. So that's x and y. And then we get another x to the end here. This is, we're going to call this x2. The x2 is the x to the end here, that's x2, and then y2 as well. So we're going to get coordinates from here, x1 and y1, and then y2 and x2. So when we subtract x1 we subtract x2 rather from x1, we get the length of this. So let me, instead of explaining, let me just type the code. So let's go here and say var x1 is equal to, so let's get x1 here. So in this case, it's going to be equal to the image dot, because we're going to look at the left side of the image. So we're going to say image dot offset left minus container dot offset left. Or instead of doing this, what we're going to do, instead of looking at the position where it is, because that one will be here, we want to see how much of this is bypassing this area this way. So I think our better option is going to be using the style. So let's do this and say image.style dot left. Okay, that left part. Unfortunately, this style.left has got a pixel or px at the end, so we can't use it for math. So what we do is we're going to replace, we're going to say x1 is equal to x1 dot replace. So what we are replacing is the pixel, and we're replacing it with an empty string like that. I hope this is how it's done on this function. I haven't done this in a while. So let's go for y1 as well. Let's do the same thing. Is equal to image dot style dot top. Okay. And as usual, we will do the replacement. Let me just copy for time's sake and convert that to y. So now we have these values x and we have the value of y. Okay. So now in this case, whichever is negative should be converted to a positive, and whichever is positive should be left as it is, because we don't want to crop any negative values, which will be an empty area. Okay. So now if I say I'm going to say if x1 is less than 0, which means it's a negative, what we're going to do is we're going to say x is equal to x multiplied by -1. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the y to convert it to a positive in case we need that. Let me do that. Y. So at this point, I want us to alert and see what we have. So alert x1 so that I see what's in x1, and alert, let's see what's in y1. Okay. So now we have to find a way to activate this function. So let's create a button called right here. Let's just put a button. Let me put a break tag and let's put an input. Well, let me just say button like that, and then say crop so that we click on it, and then we say on click go to crop, go to the crop function. Let's put event in there. All right, so let me save that and let me refresh. So now we have that crop thing, and actually we can remove this info here. We don't need to show this information, so I'll go to info here and delete in the window move, and then delete the actual control there, so that we don't need it anymore, and even the reference in here info, we don't need it. So let me refresh to see we haven't broken anything. Okay, nothing is broken, everything works fine. Refresh, and let's hit crop. Now we hit that and nothing happened, and let's go to the console. Reference X is not defined on line 20315, so let's go back there and figure it out. What is not defined? X1. Oh yeah, okay, so I forgot to put the 1 here on these X's and on these Y's. Sorry about that. So let me refresh and click crop. So now crop on the X we have 41.5. That's the value on Y1, and then there we have 50. Okay, so 41 and 50. Now there's a margin which we have to take into consideration as well. Okay, so all that is fine. We we have two positive numbers. Now we have to take the margin into consideration. So we have to subtract the margin from both. Because here, for example, the top is 50. Meanwhile, it's at 0 because we are counting from here. So since it's 50, we have to subtract a 50 from there in order to get the 0. So let's subtract margin from both. So let me do that. Minus margin. Minus margin. So actually here I have to do this minus margin before I change the value. So we have to do this subtraction before I change from either positive or negative. So to do this, what I will do is this. I get this part, go back here and say x1 is equal to x1 minus margin. And let me do the same thing with y1 is equal to y1 minus margin, like that. And then let's just alert what we get from there. So let's refresh again and hit crop. So we have minus 91 on the x. So here, from wherever the image is starting from to this position here is 91 pixels. And then I have 0 on the y. x91 is 0 on the y, which seems to be quite correct. All right. So now the next thing we have to do is get the x2 and y2. So in this case, what we do is we say var x2 is equal to x1 in this case, okay, x1 plus let's say container dot client width. Okay, so this position plus that. Now we have a margin to worry about, so we're going to subtract the margin, but since there are two margins, we're going to multiply that by 2. So let's do this. Let's put those in brackets like that, and then put another bracket here. I hope that's enough brackets, or not, maybe not. One more is required. All right, so we're adding that. This is the whole container, this one minus the margins, and so that works out just fine. So let's do the same thing for the y, as well, y2. So now which comes up to variable width over width is equal to x2 minus x1. Okay, and then height also is equal to y2 minus y1. So let's try and check these out as well, the two. Or let me just say the width. This answer should come up with, should give us a square image actually. So let's confirm that by alerting those and see what happens. So let me hit crop. So we have 300 and then we have 300. So everything is cool because we know it's a real square image. The math gets a little bit complex, but it works. All right, now one thing we are forgetting though is that we need to account for the ratios, because we had because remember, this image is not actually this is not the actual size of the image. We've shrunk it down to fit in this box. However, PHP is going to be dealing with the actual image, so we have to make sure that we multiply everything by the ratio to make sure that it's getting from the exact points that it needs to. So here we're going to multiply by ratio and multiply by ratio as well. And then we will do the same thing for x and y. We're going to say x1 is equal to x1 times ratio. Okay. Now, if you're a better programmer, you could just simply say y2 times equals ratio. This is exactly the same. This is exactly the same as this. but this is shorthand. However, it's difficult to know what you were doing in 5 years time if you come back to check your code, so I prefer to write it like this. All right, so everything is multiplied by the ratio, as we know. So let me go back and refresh this to see what's happening. Okay, that's the actual ratio. Okay, cool. I think we have the information that we actually need to crop our image. So let's try and send that image to our script using HTTP requests, XML HTTP request. So we're going to say XHR is equal to new XML HTTP request, like that. Okay, so xhr.open, let's open it up and emphasize that we are sending using get, and then the file we are looking for is named crop.php. So let's put our get variables there. The first variable we're going to say send is x is equal to, so let's add the x there, the x value, plus, and then and forget the and, y is equal to, actually what we are sending is x1 there, y1, sorry, I'm using the the PHP concatenation, I get confused sometimes, and then we say the width is equal to, so let's send that width plus, and height is equal to, let's concatenate the height, and that's about it. Then we put a comma and say true to make sure that it does this asynchronously in the background, in other words. So once we open that, let's listen in for the result before we let me say xhr.onload. Let's create a function for the once it has loaded. Let's say xhr.status. Let's check the status to see if it's equal to 200. So let's put this in an if statement. Say if xhr is equal to 200. This is when we receive a response. What we want to do is display that response. How do we display that response? Let's create a div called output dot inner HTML will be equal to xhr dot response text. Whatever the response text is will be in there. Then finally, let's actually send the data. So we are listening in before sending. So let's create this div. This div will be down here. Oh, let's go down here. After the button, let's put a break tag and let's make a div and let's give it an ID of output. All right, that's what we show our output, and let's declare it here inside, say output. We are talking about that div. All right, so everything seems to be set up just fine. Let me go back to the crop. What have I forgotten? I think we are ready and good to go. So let me go back here, refresh our image, and then you crop. All right, so this is what we have returned. That's what has been returned. The name of the file. But however, I want it to be an image instead of just showing us the name of the file. So we go back here and say, let's create the whole image thing, which in here I will do that, and then add a style as well to make sure that the width is set to 400 pixels. Okay, so that we can see exactly what we have done. All right, so let's try that again. Let me refresh and hit crop. All right, so something has happened here. We have this cropped image, which clearly we've cropped the wrong area. And as you notice, this has actually moved, and the reason why this has moved out of place is because of the scroll bar that has appeared. So to avoid that, I can reduce the image and reset it. Let me reduce it to maybe 60%, because the JavaScript, if you want this to always be aligned, you can add JavaScript to react when the image is the page is resized, but I won't be doing that because I can just resize it like that. Let me try again, crop. Okay, so we are seeing an image here. Let me make sure that it's in the center as well. Let me go back here. Let's add some styles here on output. Let's output, let's say margin auto. Let me see if that actually works. Crop. No, it doesn't work. I think we need to have a defined width of 400 pixels for that to work. Let's try that again and hit crop, and there we are. So we can see it nicely there. So clearly what has happened here is that it's if you can notice, it's cutting from the X is 0 here and the Y is down all the way there, which is quite the opposite of this. So I think we've swapped our X and Y, if I'm not mistaken. So let me see where we've done this. All right, so on Y and X2, I was using the same width. Let me change this to height. That was my bad. What else have I done wrong? All right, everything seems fine. So I think where the problem is that we have resized this image to the shape of this box, and yet in the other, in the, what's this? The PHP, we are cropping the actual one, while we haven't refreshed the ratio. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to refresh the ratio again. So let me copy this part, or let me just type it again. Let's go back to crop. Let's put an if statement here to define what the new ratio is now in reference to the box, not to the image itself. So I'm going to say if image dot natural width is greater than image dot natural height, let's do something, or else let's do something else. So now if the natural width is greater, as in this case, so we're going to use the height to define the ratio. So let's go down here and say ratio is going to be equal to image dot natural height divided by container dot client width. I think in this case we're going to have to subtract the margin as well. Multiply that by 2 since there are 2 of those. Let me put another bracket here and another one there. So the margins minus the entire width of the container divided by the height of the container. So let me copy that and paste it here as well. In this case we're using the, oh sorry, this was height and I should have used height here as well. So in this case this changes to width since we're going to the width area. So now that we've redefined the ratio, all these values are going to adjust accordingly. When we are multiplying the ratio, it will be the correct ratio. I think the ratio is wrong in this case. So let me refresh and see what we get. Crop. Exactly. So we get exactly what we want. This is exactly where we are cropping. So let me move it around. Let me move it this way and hit crop again. And you see it crops the image properly. Let me move it to the other side, crop. And you see it crops correctly. However, I don't think it will crop properly if I zoom in. Let me zoom in on this girl and hit crop. Exactly. So we get a blank screen because the values are all off due to the zoom factor here not being taken into consideration. So let's take the zoom factor into consideration, shall we? All right, in order to do that, let's go down here after everything is done and add the zoom factor. Let's say zoom factor var zoom factor is equal to the range dot value divided by 10. Okay, so we know that we've zoomed it by how many times. Now the thing with images is the more I zoom this image, the less pixels I'm going to get from this cropping, not the other way around. I'm going when it's zoomed out like this, I get more pixels in this area, but when I zoom in, I get less pixels. So instead of multiplying, we have to divide by this zoom factor. Divide every number by this zoom factor. So let's say x1 is equal to x1 divided by zoom factor. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the y. Let's divide the y by the zoom factor, and let's do the same for the width. Width is equal to width divided by zoom factor. We do the same for the height, and height again, and zoom. So this is taking into consideration how much we've zoomed it. So hopefully this is going to work out. So let's try the normal, and let's go and zoom in now and click crop, and there we go. So as you can see, everything is working pretty awesomely now. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so far this is how we do it. This is how to crop images the Facebook way, if you can call it that. All right, let's zoom it even some more. Crop. Okay, so I hope you've learned something from this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you have any questions, leave a like if you like the video, and please subscribe for more videos. And I also have a Patreon page. You can find the link in the description if you want to support me on Patreon so I can make more videos like this. That would be awesome. So thanks for watching, and until the next video, goodbye.